She first appeared to my daughter Emily, a slender woman with hair the color of wheat, wearing a sundress the color of daffodils. Just standing at the edge of our property, watching. Emily mentioned her casually over dinner. "Who's the lady that stands by our mailbox sometimes?" My wife Sarah and I exchanged glances. "What lady, honey?" I asked. "The yellow lady. She smiles but doesn't talk." Sarah frowned. "When did you see her?" "Yesterday. And Tuesday. She watches me get off the school bus." I made a mental note to be home early the next day. We lived on the outskirts of Millfield, our property backing onto dense woodland. In a town of barely 5,000, strangers stood out. "She's probably just someone new to town," Sarah reasoned later that night. "But I'll call the school tomorrow, make sure they're monitoring bus drop-offs." I nodded, but something cold had settled in my stomach. Perhaps it was the way Emily had described the woman's smile, not friendly, just there. The next afternoon, I left work early and waited at our long gravel driveway. When the bus pulled up, I watched Emily hop down the steps, her backpack bouncing. My eyes scanned the surroundings. Nothing. No yellow dress, no weak blonde woman. Just the usual rural quiet of our street. "No lady today?" I asked casually as we walked toward the house. Emily shrugged. "She doesn't come every day." 2 weeks passed without incident. The woman in yellow faded from our conversations, replaced by everyday concerns: Emily's upcoming science fair, Sarah's promotion at the hospital, my own deadline pressures at the architectural firm. Then my mother had her stroke. The call came at midnight, jolting us from sleep. Mom lived alone in her cottage on Lake Millfield, 20 minutes away. The neighbor who'd found her said she'd been repeating something about the yellow woman watching from the dock. At the hospital, Mom lay small and pale against the sheets. When she could finally string words together, she clutched my hand with surprising strength. She was just standing there, Mom whispered, "Yellow dress," watching through the window. I thought she needed help. When I went to the door, she trailed off, her new speech impediment more pronounced with her agitation. "It's okay, Mom," I soothed. "The doctor said you probably felt dizzy and fell." She shook her head vehemently. "And no, saw her before. Last week. By the mailbox." I slid down my spine. "By your mailbox?" "No. Yours." My brother Jeff flew in from Seattle to help with Mom. He stayed in our guest room, spent days at her cottage sorting through paperwork, shuttling her to appointments. "This town never changes," he remarked one evening on our back deck. The setting sun cast long shadows from the tree line behind our property. He sipped his beer, eyes distant. "Remember how we used to be scared of those woods as kids?" I nodded. We'd grown up in this very house, before I'd bought it from our parents when Mom moved to her cottage after Dad died. "Emily said something weird yesterday," Jeff continued. "Asked if I'd met Dad's yellow friend yet." My bottle froze halfway to my lips. "What?" "Yeah. Said she saw you talking to the yellow lady in the driveway the other morning." When I asked what lady, she just shrugged and said, "The one who's always watching us." I hadn't spoken to any woman in our driveway. Hadn't seen anyone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I went downstairs for water and glanced out the kitchen window. There she was, standing at the edge of our yard where lawn met forest. A silhouette in pale yellow, barely visible in the weak moonlight. Not moving. Just watching the house. I blinked hard, convinced my tired mind was playing tricks. When I looked again, she was gone. The following week brought the accident. Sarah called me in panic from the hospital. Emily had fallen from the playground structure at school, fracturing her arm and suffering a concussion. When I arrived, my daughter's face was pale, her right arm in a temporary cast. She was at the top of the climbing wall, Sarah explained, her voice shaking. Then suddenly she just let go. The playground monitor said it was like she got distracted by something. Emily was kept overnight for observation. When she was more lucid, I sat beside her bed. Do you remember what happened on the playground?" She nodded slowly. "The yellow lady was watching me from by the fence. She waved, and I waved back. Then I was falling. My throat tightened. Emily, who is this lady? Is she someone from school? My daughter's eyes, so much like Sarah's, met mine. No, Daddy. She's nobody from school. She's just around sometimes. She hesitated. She was behind you this morning when you made breakfast, standing in the corner, watching you flip pancakes. That night, I paced our bedroom while Sarah slept. Something had to be done. I'd speak to Emily's therapist. Maybe this yellow woman was some kind of stress response, an imaginary friend turned sinister. Mom's stroke and her similar vision could be coincidence, the ramblings of a confused mind. But deep down, a terrible certainty was growing. The woman was real, somehow, in some way, and her appearances preceded calamity. I finally fell into restless sleep near dawn. In my dreams, a woman in yellow stood at the foot of our bed, her face just beyond clear vision, watching silently as Sarah and I slept. Jeff left the next day, promising to return soon. As we embraced in the driveway, something made me ask, "Have you seen anything strange while you've been here? Anyone unusual?" His body stiffened almost imperceptibly. Like what? I don't know. Just anyone hanging around the property? He pulled back, studying my face. No, he said carefully. Why? I forced a laugh. Just being paranoid, I guess. But as he loaded his suitcase into the rental car, I noticed how his eyes kept darting to the tree line behind me. 2 days later, his plane went down over the Cascades. The call came from Jeff's wife, her words fragmented by sobs. Engine failure. Emergency landing attempt. No survivors. Grief crushed into me, leaving no room for breath. Sarah held me as I broke apart, as I howled my brother's name. Through the fog of shock, one terrible thought kept surfacing. Had she been there, watching him leave? Had my brother seen the woman in yellow before he boarded his flight? The following weeks passed in a haze. Funeral arrangements. Mom moving in temporarily, her recovery now complicated by devastating grief. Emily withdrawn, her broken arm a constant reminder of our fractured family. One night, I found my daughter sitting in the bay window of her bedroom, staring out into the darkness. Can't sleep, Em? She didn't turn. She's out there again. I moved quickly to the window, pulse racing. At first I saw nothing but our dimly lit yard, the shadowy mass of trees beyond. Then, a flicker of movement. A pale shape just within the tree line. Go to bed, Emily, I said, keeping my voice steady. Now, please. Once she was tucked in, I went downstairs, grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, and stepped outside. The night air was cool against my face as I moved across the lawn. Crickets fell silent as I approached the forest edge. The beam of my flashlight cut through darkness, illuminating trunks and undergrowth. Hello? I called. Who's there? Silence answered. I stepped between the first trees, sweeping my light in wide arcs. Nothing. Just as I was about to turn back, my beam caught a flash of yellow, deeper in the woods. Without thinking, I followed. The forest grew denser. Branches snagged my clothes. Still, I pushed forward, propelled by grief-fueled anger. Ahead, that glimpse of yellow kept appearing and vanishing, leading me deeper. Stop! I shouted. Who are you? What do you want from us? Suddenly the trees opened into a small clearing. In its center stood a dilapidated structure I'd never seen before, some kind of old storm cellar with a rotted wooden door set into an earthen mound. And beside it, perfectly still, stood the woman in yellow. My flashlight illuminated her fully for the first time. Her dress was the color of butter, simple and old-fashioned. Her blonde hair hung loose around a face that was ordinary, unremarkable. Yet something about her eyes made my skin crawl. They reflected my flashlight beam like an animal's. Who are you? I demanded, voice shaking. She smiled, a simple curve of lips that conveyed nothing of warmth or humanity. When she spoke, her voice was soft yet somehow carried perfectly. You know me, Daniel. My name in her mouth felt wrong, contaminated. Your family has always known me. What are you talking about? Why are you watching us? Why did you? I choked on the words. My brother. My mother. My daughter. Were you there? Her head tilted slightly. I'm always there. Before. During. After. I've walked these woods since before your grandfather built that house. Before there was a town at all. What do you want? Nothing. I simply am. She gestured to the storm cellar. They knew. They tried to bind me here, long ago. But binding doesn't last. I always find my way out. My flashlight beam wavered as understanding began to dawn. This part of the forest, the stories Jeff and I had grown up with, woods you shouldn't enter, places you shouldn't go. Our parents' inexplicable anxiety whenever we played near the tree line. The accidents, the stroke, Emily's fall, Jeff's plane, that was you. Her expression remained placid. I don't cause. I simply proceed. I am the shadow before the storm. The silence before the scream. She stepped closer. I've watched over your family for generations, Daniel. I watched your father before his heart gave out. I watched your grandfather before the tractor rolled. Cold sweat trickled down my back. Stay away from us. That empty smile again. I can't. We're bound together, your bloodline and I. Always have been. Always will be. Why? What did we do to deserve this? Deserve? She seemed genuinely puzzled. Nature doesn't punish, Daniel. It simply exists. Your ancestor found me, freed me, then tried to imprison me again. But some things, once released, cannot be contained. A rustling from behind made me turn. Sarah stood at the edge of the clearing, her face pale in the moonlight. Daniel? Who are you talking to? I spun back. The woman in yellow was gone. Only the decrepit storm cellar remained. The days that followed were filled with frantic research. County historical records. Family documents in Mom's attic. Old journals kept by my great-grandfather. The pieces came together slowly. In 1887, my ancestor Jeremiah Hayes had been clearing this land to build the first family home. He discovered the old root cellar, far older than any recorded settlement, and something inside it. The journals grew cryptic then, mentioning only a presence released and later, desperate attempts to return it to confinement after the tragedies began. Whatever his methods, they partially worked. The woman in yellow had been bound to the land, unable to stray far from the forgotten cellar. But each generation of our family had suffered her attention, her silent witness to our most devastating moments. I shared everything with Sarah. To her credit, she didn't dismiss me, not after what she'd seen in the clearing. We need to leave this place, she said simply. I shook my head. She said we're bound to her. I don't think distance will matter. Then what? We just live with this thing watching us? Appearing before every disaster? I had no answer. That night, I dreamed of the cellar. In my dream, its door stood open, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. At the bottom, something waited, something ancient and patient. I awoke with absolute certainty about what needed to be done. The next day, I returned to the clearing alone. The storm cellar door had fallen completely now, revealing the stone steps of my dream. Taking a deep breath, I descended. The interior was cool and smelled of earth. My flashlight revealed a small chamber with walls of fitted stone far too sophisticated for a simple root cellar. Symbols I didn't recognize were carved into the rock. In the center stood a stone pedestal, empty except for traces of yellow dust. Understanding came like a physical blow. Not a prison. An altar. Generations of my family had not been victims, we'd been keepers. Guardians of something we no longer understood. When I emerged, she was waiting. Now you see, she said. What are you? I asked. I've been called many things. Oracle. Harbinger. Banshee. She looked toward the direction of our house. Your family once honored me. Brought offerings. Understood what I provided. Which is what? Warning, she said simply. The gift of preparation. The chance to say goodbye. I stared at her, this ordinary-looking woman who was anything but. You don't cause the tragedies. No more than the weather vane causes the storm. Then what good are you? Grief made my voice sharp. What good is knowing destruction is coming if we can't prevent it? For the first time, something like emotion crossed her face, a flicker of what might have been pity. That is not the gift, Daniel. The gift is knowing the preciousness of what will be lost. The gift is treasuring what remains fragile and temporary. We stood in silence as the wind stirred the trees around us. Your daughter sees me clearly, she said finally. Children often do. In time, she will understand her role as keeper. And if we refuse? If we walk away from this land, this legacy? Her expression didn't change. You won't. I knew, with bone-deep certainty, that she was right. We stayed. What choice did we have? Mom recovered enough to return to her cottage. Emily's arm healed. Life resumed its rhythmic normalcy, except now I understood the weight of our family inheritance. I renovated the cellar, reinforced its structure, replaced the door. Inside, I placed fresh flowers, occasionally small tokens, not worship, but acknowledgement. An uneasy truce. Sometimes, I still glimpse her, a flash of yellow at the edge of vision, walking the perimeter of our property, standing in Emily's doorway as my daughter sleeps, watching from across the street as Sarah loads groceries into our car. I've come to recognize the particular quality of dread her appearances bring. The way my stomach drops, knowing something approaches, a minor mishap or a life-altering catastrophe, there's no way to tell. But I've also learned to heed the warning, to hold my family closer, to say the important things now, not later, to treat each day as the precious, temporary gift it is. Sometimes Emily asks about the yellow lady. I've begun telling her carefully edited versions of our family history. Someday, she'll need to know everything. Last week, I saw the woman standing at our kitchen window, watching Sarah prepare dinner. That night, I held my wife longer than usual before sleep, whispered all the love I usually leave unspoken. The next morning, Sarah's routine mammogram found something concerning. We wait now for more tests, for answers. And in the yard, at the forest's edge, a figure in yellow keeps silent vigil, not the cause of our fear, but its herald. Not our enemy, but our unwanted inheritance. The woman who watches, the shadow before the storm.